Okay, in this next video, I want to do a couple of smaller things here. And what I want to do is demonstrate a little more logging. Although I really covered this more in the previous videos than I thought I was going to, so I'm not going to go into great detail here. I will show logging, but not in quite the detail that I originally thought I'd do, because again, I've already shown that. And then I'm going to show logging in a format that I like, and I'm going to share a little recipe right here for how to control that logging. Then I have a note here that says this is a simplified version of the previous example, and it adds in a little logging. And all we're going to do is call get all on this with the curl commands that I show here. So what I'm going to do is skip all this for right now. I want to show you what's the same. So the to-do case class is the same as it was previously. This type we have here, I believe, is the same. I think I used that type before in one of the previous videos, but this is our ref that contains a map. And then within make routes, I just have that one route. So this is getting all of the to-do items at that path right there. And then what I'm doing here is, instead of starting off with a empty map as I was before right here in this code, what I'm doing is I'm starting off with a map that has a couple of elements in it. And that way we can just go ahead and call this one path right here, and it will already have some elements in it, or some values in it, I should say. So I'm creating a little map right there, and then I'm putting that into ref.make. Remember that ref.make is the way that you create a new reference. So this is our ref of a map right here, which is our simulated database. And everything else in the program should look very similar to what we had before. The only difference might be is that I'm showing a ZIO.loginfo right here when I start the program. Then again, I create the database right there. I pass that database into the makeRoutes function. We do server.serve on our application just like before. Have the server configuration just like before. And we have the server configuration here, and then we're using the live server here. So this portion right here isn't exactly the same as the last 3 videos, but it is the same as the videos right before that. And specifically, I want to say that I'm not using a Z layer to provide the database. That's a big difference there. So now that we've covered what's old, let's cover what's new here. And what's new is I have kind of a recipe that goes from here to here on how you can customize logging output. And the short story is that you create a custom log format. So you can see the type of this is going to be a log format. And what I want in my output over here, let's see if I can see any of that output right away. Oops, I'm already in SBT. How about run? Okay, there we go. So what I want is the date timestamp right here. And even this can be improved. But what I want to show is that this first part is the timestamp. Then I have a pipe symbol after that. Then the next section here, I show what's called the log format level. So I'm logging at the info level right there. Then the third field I show is a fiber ID, and that's right here. Again, each one of these fields is separated by the pipe symbol, and that's what I want. I want these logs to be both human readable and computer readable. And then I put our message here. This log format.line is the actual text that we are logging. So this says starting the program, starting the server, and then server started right there. I put this last because our message, of course, is going to be variable length. So I want to have as much room here at the end of the line as I need to for any message that we want to log over there. So this is a format that I like right here. And if you want to change that format, you can dig into the log format type a little bit and see what your other options are for logging inside of there. The next thing I found I had to do was, at least for console logging, was I had to create a logger config. So I create that from a console logger config. And that's because I'm logging to the console here. So then you specify, well, the format that I want to use is this custom log format. And then there's other things you can specify here with this filter. So I am saying that I want to have the root level be loglevel.info. And then here I don't have any mappings. And I started to explore this a little bit. And basically the way this works is when you have an application, so it'll be like com my app core is going to be a package. Then com my app API will be another package. This appeared to work in some tests that I was using. And this lets you control the log level at a package level. So with this line right here of mappings, I'm not specifying anything, but if you do want to specify that, I believe that this part is correct. But in all of these cases, such as log format or this right here, I encourage you to dig into the code and find the documentation you need. So this is an example that shows a filter with log level by name and this information right here. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but I always encourage people to go ahead and dig into the code here. Hopefully you'll find some good documentation or good examples in there that will show you how to do this. And of course, in 2025 now, you can also ask your local AI tool, your generative AI tool, to both look at this code and offer suggestions for how you do this. And they're getting better and better at solving ZIO problems, so that's really cool. But getting back to this, I almost want to call this a recipe right here, these 3 lines of code. The next thing you do is you override this bootstrap value. You say you want to remove the default loggers, and then you use this console logger, and you say, I want the config for the console logger to be my logger config, which is right here. So again, this is for the console logger over here. I specify the config to use is my logger config right here, and logger config specifies that the format it should use is my custom log format, which is right here. So again, this is almost a little bit of a recipe that you can use to start customizing your logging format in your ZIO applications. So that covers that part. And then as we scroll down, I already showed this code and you've seen it in previous videos. What I was doing here, let's take a look at that. So the first thing I did was I started creating a make routes function, and I was doing it without much logging, as I show right there. So all I was doing in this code was saying I was going to do zio.loginfo and say that I'm fetching all the to-do items. Then we access the database. And I note that if this could fail, you'd write code like this. And I've shown that in a previous video, so you've actually seen all of that already. So I did show this code in previous videos. If I didn't show the zio.loginfo, you're about to see more of that there. So that is very close to what I did before. Now this is a new version of make routes here. And the first line is all the same. The second line is all the same as what you've seen before. And now I am going to expand that a little bit so we can see all that. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, first thing is log that we've received a request to fetch all the to-do elements. So then we get those out of our database, and that's our usual map right here. And then I should go backwards and say, note that this one is a log info. This one is at a log debug level. So this is how you can control the different levels. And if I go ahead and scoot back there and hit that, you can see the different levels that we have over here. But I want to go back to log debug. And then what I'm saying here is I fetch the to-do elements from the database, and then I'm just printing out that map debug level right there. And note that anytime you do this logging over here, you're going to have an underscore over here. And if we recall, the underscore in a for expression means ignore the return type from this part over here. So this underscore right here means go ahead and ignore whatever the return value actually is. I think I said return type, but the return value is over there. So that's another thing to know right there. And then when we come to this if then else block of code here in this area, this part right here is the same as what we had before. This part is the same as what we had before. This part here is the same as what we had before. And the only difference here is that I'm logging what I want to log right before I run this code here. And again, in this line here, I'm logging the information that I want to log right here. And then I run the code that I want to run there, like that. And I think this is a pretty good way of doing that. And I should mention what as is right here and right here. So you can see that I'm calling as after I call log info. So what it does is it replaces the result of this value right here with this value here. And it turns out that's a really nice little way to do logging. You can think of that as being very similar, if not the same, as the following code that I'm going to do here. So let me go over here, and I could say I want to call .map and ignore whatever that value is, and then we would have the response over here. So recall that map always transforms the result from this into something else. So in this particular case, I'm saying I want to transform the result from this code into this value here. And the way you do that is you ignore that underscore and you return what you want to return right here. And I don't know if as is implemented exactly like that under the covers, but it works just like that. And I think of it as a shortcut for that. And the last thing I'll say is I usually like to log information before I do something. And in this particular case, where we're returning responses here and here, we need to do the logging first and then return the response last there and there, because what we want to return from our code is this response over here. Okay, and then we have this map error code here, and let me look up there real quick. So I probably have enough here. I'm going to leave this as an exercise for the reader. And that would be exercise. How do you implement logging here? So again, I'm going to leave that as an exercise for the reader for how you implement logging that error. And I hope I don't give it away here. No, I don't have it right there, so that's good. I try to leave you little exercises when I can, so there's one. And let's see what I had here for logging version 2, or version 3, really. So all of this code here is the same. And now this response block is different. Okay, I see the difference here. Here I'm using as, so I'm doing log info and then I'm using as, which as I just showed is very similar to map. Here I'm using the and then operator to chain effects. So let's need to make this even wider now. And I think the reason I showed this and kept this in here was because I was working with types. So the ZIO log info type is going to be any, nothing in unit, right? So that's the type resulting from this code right here. And then I have this note that the and then operator chains effects, ignoring the result of the first, which is the unit right here. So it's ignoring this unit result from log info, and then returns the result of the second. And the second is the response inside of ZIO.succeed. So the thing I was trying to show here is that you need to wrap this code in ZIO.succeed because I'm using this chaining operator. So if you do want to do logging with the and then operator like this, the purpose for me leaving this code here was to show you that you have to wrap the response in ZIO.succeed. And that is just to get all the types to match up. And specifically what I'm trying to say is you cannot write that code like that. That will not compile. You need to wrap it in ZIO succeed because we're going from one ZIO value here and saying, and then it's expecting another ZIO value here. And all you have to do, as I show here, is just wrap this response with ZIO.succeed, and you'll get what you want. So that was a little long-winded, but I sometimes do logging like this, so I did want to show this as an alternative to the as operator or the map method up there. Okay, and everything else is the same, so let's go ahead and close that down to here. Now we have that closed down, we have it running over here, so I want to look at the actual running code right here. So the first code we got with the starting messages over here was starting the program right here. So my message is starting the program. And then an interesting thing is that starting the server and server started are coming from other code. So that might be another good exercise for the reader, or in this case the viewer, is to show where this code is coming from. So show where starting the program is coming from, and then also show where this text and this text here are coming from. So that's kind of a good exercise to add right here. But skipping that for right now, all I want to do is that curl command. So let me go back up there and get that curl command. Come back here so we can look at this code. So this is the code that's going to respond when I run this curl command. And let me do that. So what you should see is the log info here first. And we see that up here. So we should see received a request to fetch all to-dos and received a request to fetch all to-dos right there. And then this code runs, and then I log debug right there. And fetch to-dos from the database is not showing over here, and that has to do with the root level right here. So that's another thing to test. I may have to start documenting all these But that is another exercise for the reader, is to see what you have to do to get that log debug to show up right there. And then both of these are at the info level, so we should see that output there. Found two to-dos responding with JSON. So that should be right there. Found those and responding with the JSON. So that's the logging output here. And then the result of our responses here is very similar to what you've seen in previous videos. So we won't go into that too much. So before I go, I want to say that I want to leave that as an exercise. So let's do that. Exercise. Get a debug output to show up. And then here we could say exercise, show the class method where the message output is coming from. Okay, so those are a couple of exercises I just thought of as we were working on this. The other thing you want to do as an exercise is go ahead and give this code a try. So I will say that as well. Switch to using this code and test it. So that's another exercise for you right there. Other than that, if you are interested in logging your output in a format that you like, I hope this code and this video has been helpful.